Hey everyone, today I present to you a video on the calculation of expected credit losses, which is mandated by Ind AS 109. The Ind AS 109 is on financial instruments, and the topic which we are trying to discuss and deliberate today is expected credit loss, which is indicative of the impairment of any kind of financial asset which a company might be carrying into its books today. Generally, as a notion which is prevalent in the situations today, Ind AS 109 is deemed to be expected that it is for all any kind of financial instruments and associated dealings with it. The answer is yes. The notion is right. But when it comes to ECL, which is expected credit losses, the larger understanding of the accounting audience or the auditors or the general finance fraternity in general, the understanding is ECL is applicable only to accounts receivable impairment. But that is a wrong notion which is currently prevalent in the market. When I talk about expected credit losses, as per Indian Accounting Standards 109, that itself means that it is applicable to any kind of asset and the impairment analysis of the asset in general. It can be accounts receivable, it can be deposits, it can be any kind of asset which I am carrying into my books today. And if the quality is not up to the mark, or in the general accounting parlance, if my recoverable value is not at par with the fair value or the carrying value which I'm carrying in my books, if there is a mismatch, it calls for an assessment. And if the recoverable value is less than the carrying value, which denotes that the quality of the asset is not up to the mark, in that case, we go ahead for the impairment. Now, how do we do impairment? It depends on the finance folks. Some companies take a different stand, some companies will take a different stand. But today, I am trying to focus on the expected credit loss calculation and the standard analysis for accounts receivable in general, because that is the most affected area in which erstwhile what we used to calculate as the provision for bad and doubtful debts is now being calculated as ECL, which is nothing but expected credit losses, for which I have a foolproof arithmetical model backed by assumptions and discussions with the management. So management will have its own stand. It is subjective in nature. There is no objectivity into it. And then this is the subjective nature of the model, which I will walk you through. I'll just give a quick glimpse of how we do the calculation. Accordingly, the provision for bad and doubtful debts in the erstwhile era and today what is called expected credit losses is being computed. So I'll just take you through a quick small presentation which I have, and accordingly we'll walk you through on the calculation part of it, right? Yeah. So this is the expected credit loss model, which I told I will be discussing on the impairment losses on trade receivables today, which was erstwhile provision for bad and doubtful debts. So it tells you about the recognition of any kind of impairment losses on a financial asset. Like I said earlier, it is not specific to a trade receivable, but today we are trying to deliberate and focus on the topic of trade receivables, right? The general approach which we follow today is to do a loss allowance equal to 12-month expected credit losses for financial instruments where the management feels that the credit risk has increased significantly since initial recognition. Suppose I am carrying an asset today, and if I feel that it is carrying a credit risk embedded into it, which is affecting the value which is carrying today, it calls for a loss recognition. So basically, the focus is to have a good fair valuation of any kind of asset which I am carrying into the books to ensure that the values I'm carrying is sacrosanct. The logic and the intent is that the change of risk of default should again be backed by substantial reason and information, basis which the weights and the percentages to be applicable for the accounts receivable is to be calculated. So I just put an example here. So an analysis of the 12-month expected credit loss for debtor A suggests that 10% of the debtor A will turn out to be bad. I've got a contemplation and I have got an idea that this debtor A is not doing well. What do I do? So in that case, since the indicators are strong, therefore the management needs to go ahead and do a 10% expected credit loss impairment for the debtor A. Now, for those instruments where the credit risk has increased significantly since the recognition, so initially when we recognized the asset into the books, it is the credit loss can be what maximum? What is the maximum credit loss which can be coming into the books? It can be maximum 100%, right? Because if I'm carrying a value of rupees 100 for an example, maximum 100 is the loss today which a company can get. So therefore, if the presumptions are that the risk has increased significantly, 100% of the total value of the financial asset oblique accounts receivable are provided into the books as expected credit loss. And this assessment is done annually for the quality of debtors. Various companies do different assessments. Some do quarterly, some do half yearly, some do annual assessments. Again, depends on the kind of company, which company wants to go ahead with which kind of assessment as such today. There's a illustrative figure and the guidance which tells you that if the asset is credit impaired at the initial recognition, go ahead and provide for 100% of the expected credit losses, which is called the lifetime losses, right? If the asset, a trade receivables or a contractual right to receive cash or other financial asset, and it is arising out of Ind AS 11 or 18, recognize 100% ECL. If no, is there a significant increase in the risk? Yes, recognize 100% credit losses. Even if it is no, go ahead and recognize 100% of the expected credit losses into your books of accounts. Now, how do we do the measurement part of it? So there is a foolproof arithmetical calculation and the guidance from the standard which tells you that go ahead and calculate a joint probability method calculation for the impairment of the credit losses. It should be an unbiased approach and should be evaluated by a range of possible outcomes. At the same time, we also need to look at what is the time value of money and ensure that it is available without putting much cost and effort to develop the model. Now, a matrix or pattern may generally have the following features. It is based on a historical loss experience. That means the debtor is not performing well since some period of time, which indicates that the debtor might default tomorrow, and which is where it calls for impairment as such. Again, there are certain appropriate reasons as segmentation, which can be used. It can be a geographical reason, customer rating, product type. There can be a number of factors which the management can pick up tomorrow to understand the impairment factors embedded into the financial asset. Now, assessing the changes in the credit risk. So there's a non-exhaustive list of information which I have captured here, which is significant changes in the internal price indicators of the credit risk. Other changes like the rate or the term of the existing financial instrument. Other factors like market factors. So like in COVID, many of the debtors got bankrupt or their business is very low, which is why they are not able to pay back to us. or there is a lot of changes in the operating results of the borrower. So these are the major reasons. But again, this list is non-exhaustive. There can be n number of reasons, which is where you can get the impairment analysis of any kind of debtor today in the books. So the debtors, like I said, is calculated on a joint probability method. What I will do is I will walk you through the model which we generally use as a practical expedient for various companies as such. So I'll just quickly present the model for your convenience and insight. So this is the model which is being used. So what we have done is, and see again, it depends on various type of companies and various type of risk profiling for various companies. But what I've done is I've taken the aging of the accounts receivable quarter wise into different buckets as such. So if you look at what we have done is we have taken current 1 to 30, 31 to 60, and so on and so forth till more than 810. Suppose for a company whose credit impairment analysis states that after 360 days of carrying a debtor into my books, the same becomes unrecoverable. I cannot recover that. What do I do then? Then in that case, I will extend my model only to 360 days and I will not go beyond that. But since this is an illustrative model, I'm trying to present to you that how my debtors are behaving in this scenario. So I've done the bucketing. And what I'm doing is I am again making the buckets small now. I'm classifying those into smaller buckets. So I'm making 1 to 90, and then 90 to 180, 180 to 270, 270 to 360, so on and so forth, right? And then what we do is we take out a joint probability. So just let me present you the example. In a joint probability method, what happens is the initial bucket and the last bucket, that is the most significant factor where management has to do a lot of subjective analysis as such, right? So if I look at from 90 to 180, what I've done is I've taken the movement of the aging of 1 to 90 bucket of debtors who ultimately moved to 90 to 180, and what is the percentage which actually moved to next quarter as such. So like that, we have done a complete analysis quarter by quarter. And then what we have done is we have done the averaging part of it. So this is the averaging which we have done. Now there's another question which I was indicating earlier is on the current bucket and the last bucket. See, last bucket, what happens, suppose for a company, if it is more than 360 days, for that company, it is 100% impairment after 360 days. In our example, after 630 days, the debtor becomes impaired, which is where I'm providing for 100% of the credit losses, which is indicated in this row. I'll just color it for everyone's convenience, right? And for the earlier, so for the first bucket, generally what happens, we will never see the debtors becoming bad in the first bucket. Even if it is becoming bad, we have to provide 100%. But general trend, what we have seen in various industries is 1 to 2% is what becomes impaired in the first bucket. And then last bucket is of course 100%, which I've already presented here. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking a joint probability of bucket to bucket movement. So like for first bucket is 2%. In next bucket, the probability is 79%. Next is 27.45, and so on and so forth. Accordingly, it keeps on decreasing with period of time, or it may remain constant again based on the quality of the debtors which we carry. Similar calculation have been done for various other buckets. So starting from this bucket to the last bucket which we have here, right? And then what we have done is we have taken the ECL calculation for various other years. So we have done the calculation from 2014 till 2019, and then the averaging is done. So this is the percentage which will be applied to various buckets of the accounts receivable which is outstanding into the books, and it is again applied on the value of the debtors to arrive at the number or to arrive at the expected credit loss of any kind of model. So this was about expected credit losses. In case you have any kind of questions, please feel free to comment or chat in the comment boxes. We will come back to you with the best available answer and any kind of support needed from our end. Thank you. Have a nice day.